This might be a very wise thing to plan right now, the character that each animator is going to work on. And because you're going to be limited in the men who are going to be able to give you the personality you want, and you want it to be consistent. You don't want to come to a personality scene and have it drop way down. Now, Frank and Milt and Eric, you ought to pick up different sequences, and each one with a different character. Keep ahead on the exploring mainly, and then when these other guys are ready, everything will be ready.
Yes. Nearly everybody gets Twitter-pated in the springtime.
Twitter-pated. Sounds like a name you might use if you were living with one of the animals or birds out in the woods.
Yes. This is a rich spot. We have got some definite ideas that we're working on. They'll be a lot funnier than we had in the script.
What do you think of taking the owl and his Twitter-pated thing and putting it into a musical pattern? He doesn't sing the song, but at least it'll give you a certain rhythmic feeling.
To get weak in the knees.
Now, the owl would have to talk in rhythm, like the musical thing of him walking in the air.
Light as a feather, and before you know it, you're walking on air.
I think that is funny. His demonstrations there of love and everything, especially in view of what is going to happen.
Exactly.
And through him, we can build the scene funny enough so it isn't straight while we're building it. He gets a little silly about the whole thing. It's all pretty silly.
So you'd better be careful.
Does the owl fall in love?
Oh, he's had his day.
Here we've got these three bachelors, kind of three musketeers. And the three of them start moving along, and then we develop a pattern where one after the other, they get hit.
Me neither.
You know the theme you spoke of each time a guy falls in love, the march? You pick it up here and really build it. I'd like to play the instrument of each character as they turn so that we tie the instrument to them clearly. Take the humorous slant on our music. It's going to be funnier and more clever if we can tell these stories without a lot of dialogue.
How about the little skunk? Anybody want him?
Mark did such a swell job on those story sketches, it might be a good idea to let him take the stuff.
Mark who?
Davis, Mark Davis.
Oh, is he over here? He should be getting animation experience. When you get certain characters, like the little skunk, like Figaro when he begins to be a little more than a cat, the audience likes it, and we ought to work more of our characters that way.
George had a good idea about having the skunk blush. We've had a lot of things blush, but I think to have a skunk blush, it's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, if we actually could.
Mark mentioned the fact that the inside of the paws on the skunk are pink, almost like baby's hands, and it's probably the skin color all over them.
Well, the skin is quite red under the fur, and it would be perfectly possible, I think, blushing through. Mm-hmm. I was thinking we might play up the happiness of the skunk here for the first time. It's the first time he's really ever happy.
We see the girl skunk's tail in the flowers, and then Flower comes on up there. There's something about just that tail of the skunk.
Yeah. Then when the skunk drops out, here comes the two of them away, and the march picks up again. Then, when you hear Thumper's signature instrument come in, the girl bunny reacts to that sound.
I like that laugh. You could take that laugh, and with the music in it, you might be able to build it a little.
Those sketches of the girl bunny look good, though. She could be primping when Thumper looks at her.
Yeah, this whole section here is just in that delicious formative stage where everybody ought to pitch in and help build it. We have a situation here that seems to offer every kind of opportunity.
Well, there's a chance for a lot of funny business for the animators on that.
And one opportunity is better than another, and so on and so forth. Larry's worked out with Frank a little musical affair with gag ideas in it.
If we have a little instrument for her and another one for him, two instruments of the same color, like the flute and piccolo, We could play statement and answer back and forth with a little wink for her and effect on him with the instrument.
Yeah, we're thinking there's a good chance musically with this wiggly nose thing that as she comes closer with her nose and the music goes right through him, and then when she comes up and stops him, it's like stopping the music.
I think it's got possibilities here of making it a great sequence.
Yeah, one after the other, they drop out of the club, and here's Bambi, and he meets Faline. There's kind of a clever parallel. You know, I was thinking here that when Bambi comes down to drink, he comes down and puts his nose in the water, and ripples come out, just as he did earlier, and he realizes it's Faline. And he's still a little timid about meeting this girl deer. You know, he's the same guy, you know what I mean? It's like an inner force that gets a hold of him.
It's always been a worry to me, this section especially. I believe the balance is going to be good if we can get some humor in. We have to relax a moment, then build a little laugh sequence. From that kiss, you almost feel something vibrating. He's really in a trance.
It seems as if we can see this thing take effect on this guy, so that we realize how he feels, and that's what we're seeing. We're really going into his imagination, like the dream sequence in Snow White.
Well, they could really do slow-motion leaps through a meadow or maybe through the clouds.
In the book, they talk about how they go up straight and then come down on all fours, but lay off the stars and moonlight. That would just be too silly.
Don't you think he's got to be snapped out of it instead of floating down? You're feeling the same way Bambi is when suddenly you're snapped out of the thing with him.
Yeah, you get the same surprise he gets.
Bambi.
We got about 10 reels of clippings. MGM has loaned us indefinitely. A lot of good action stuff to use for reference for this fight scene between Rano and Bambi.
Bambi.
What could happen there? You could use color to express that mood, too. Everything he sees is pinkish. Everything, this whole forest, you drop all unnaturalistic color out of the thing. He's seeing red.
Yes, it would have a fury, a dramatic quality to it.
I told Bob to go to the music library and dig out records, some Wagner, Stravinsky, and things like that.
Yes.
Music that has a thrill, music that's stimulating. Out of this color we're using to symbolize Bambi's emotional reaction to this thing, that's when the whole fight ends. It's almost a red sunset anyway, see?
Yes.
But how would it be if, as he wins the fight, that the red sunset turns into a beautiful gold?
Ah.
Last bit you see of the sun is suddenly a lot of gold in it. Let that sort of symbolize the ending of that fight. That everything is hunky-dory now. Using symbolism throughout this thing. Instead of all being red at the end, it's all a beautiful golden glow. You know how it casts that beautiful golden glow?
Yes.
You get that part of the spectrum there.
It's a pretty good scene. Bambi's been through another test. After Bambi has fought for this girl, let's give him a love scene. Let's give him something that they can feel happy about.
You don't want it to get embarrassing. You know how you can get in a love thing. You know, we definitely don't want to have the audience sit back there and go, oh boy. But you never get that feeling with two lovely deer walking along and beautiful music.
Yeah.
You gotta get some of those quaking aspen in there somewhere, you know, I mean, the leaves just shimmering, it'd be pretty.
What has made me really realize the power of music is working on Fantasia. I think that everyone that's working on it feels that too now. At first, it was quite a battle. Every time we had a meeting, somebody wanted to put some good sound effects in. Now, I don't think you could get any of them to even think about it. Kind of like your stag fight there. If you get any inspirations on the music, work to it. If it handicaps you, work the other way and let the musicians work around the action. I mean, it's like anything else. You kind of keep the music in mind all the time you're building it, but the musician comes back and writes a definitive score afterwards. You know, they sometimes get that inspiration afterwards.
I'd like to work it both ways. I'd like to get the pattern generally the way that we think it ought to be first, and then write the music and pull the pattern into that.
Everything begins to look more beautiful to him at that time, too. We ought to save a lot of stuff for that, because that could be a very beautiful section there. Another way to express they're in love without having to say it at all.
The pedals are riding along on the glistening water, and you get the feeling, and you follow this path along, and then you cut back to the two lovers.
A beautiful effect sequence.
Yes, musically built. Now, this is the first time we've seen any night in the picture, and there's a lot of beauty at night. There's where you can take a slow pace.
If you don't, you're going to outpace yourself.
And as Bambi is in the thicket sleeping, we were going to hear an ominous horn tone, barely audible, which is almost him sensing something.
There's a tension there, before you know what Bambi has seen even. He feels something. The animals know that scent. It's all they need, and it shows the terror that man strikes in these animals. Now, because you went to all that trouble in the beginning to establish man with a theme, do you think you ever need to show the camp of man?
Well, I think it has to be a suggestion. If the audience didn't realize it was a camp, you'd put the smell of bacon in the air.
You know, I always had this feeling regarding fire that when Bambi or the crows or whoever it is senses danger and you know there's something wrong. Bambi, for instance, coming out on a crag or something and looking down in the valley in the distance, you get the wisps of smoke coming up from the campfire and you recognize it's man's camp.
It is man.
I think they ought to say less than the book does. Now, the book just rambles on, but when we put it in action, we should hold it down and get the meat of it.
In our films, we prove it in action instead of talking about it.
Hurry, follow me. Feline!
He should immediately think of Feline and go after her. He's a hero. Why do we have to show man any more than we did before? Why don't we just go out and here comes the jaybirds again?
And your theme, man's theme again.
Paralleling the same situation you had when man was in the forest before, only now there's numbers of them. You sense the danger, the music and the animals running, and you go with him. You never see man at that point. Then you've got these crows, and the crows begin to call with that music building up. You sense the danger, the music and the animals running. You still never see man. The tendency is to put too many words in, where the animals are gathered there together and don't know where to turn. You know. Maybe you don't need any dialogue at all. Maybe we would do better to express that with music and action, don't you think?
Yes. Now we have this scene of the pheasant first preparing us for that first shot. Larry's been working on the musical idea for building that up.
We save our drums, so when she says, listen, and you hear these drums coming, and this gets louder and louder, as this has an effect on this character, and she can't stand it, and it gives us the feeling of man coming closer by increasing the volume.
And the music ought to increase in tempo until she flies out. It's like a heartbeat getting faster. Your heart begins to pound, you know?
After the first shot is fired at the pheasants, were you thinking of having shots ring out in the distance?
Yeah, all through that section.
I see. Once that first shot is fired, everything goes off.
Yeah, I like that. The excitement should continue.
Yeah, while the hunt is going on and the smaller animals are being shot here and there, Feline and Bambi become separated, and Bambi tries to locate Feline. All this time, the hunters are coming closer and closer, and you don't know who's going to reach her first, the hunters or Bambi.
There's this girl, Retta Scott, in animation, who can draw these dogs incredibly fierce. We should use her on this.
You handle the dogs as a mob, like a lynching mob or something.
Yeah.
They're really quite villainous. It's always like they're out of breath, sort of fiendish in a way.
I'd like to see us build for a climax in the music as they have her cornered. They turn and listen for a moment, and you hear Man's theme coming in. And then they turn and go back at her with a lot of barking. The dogs are all the way around her.
Bambi rushes in and attacks the dogs, tossing them into the brush and then scaring him away. He's been quite a hero, you know. Do we really need to have any dialogue for the dogs? Don't you think we can do it with music?
Well, the dog says, you can't escape from him even though you've escaped from us. We wanted Bambi to hear it. That was the only purpose there.
You might not need that, but it's inferred that they feel like that. All the animals feel that. Sounds wordy, you know what I mean? You want to keep it from sounding like the book. Maybe the dogs wouldn't talk back to them at all.
I always liked that thought that all the animals had an understanding between them.
So maybe we should cut it.
Yeah.
Are you going to have Bambi shot?
Somewhere, something ought to happen to him. He could be hit in the shoulder. I'll tell you something else. It'll give us something to do with the stag. This would really give him a problem to cope with. The shot would ring out just as he is in the middle of the leap.
He tries to walk, but he keeps collapsing. You hear the dogs back there, like they're still coming after him.
Exactly. If he's shot and he's fallen and this fire comes in and the stag leads him out, that would make swell suspense.
If you could show that camp, you'd know it was man. He left his fire burning there, and the wind blew it and started it all.
I was wondering about planting the fire, though.
I don't worry so much about that, because those things sneak up on you. You never see fire start. If you did, they wouldn't catch hold. You're right there, and suddenly there's a fire.
The wind blows some coals over, and all of a sudden it's swoosh off. It was always important to me that the careless angle came in, that certainly the animals hadn't done anything to start this.
I like to associate that fire directly with man, though. Otherwise, it becomes a separate danger. You feel man's responsible for it.
We come back to this poor buck that's lying there.
You should hear his voice first.
Get up, Bambi.
You never know where he comes from. He has that mysterious quality about him.
When Bambi goes down here, we've got a chance to capitalize on the suspense of that fire and give a little reason for our dramatic suspense.
Yeah, like the hero perishing in flames.
And we've got a chance to play the suspense of this guy getting up to get out of this fire.
I don't mean to humanize everything, but you watch a fire, and the darndest thing is, you can still keep it as the flames and everything, but my God, they're hungry. They're reaching for things. It's when they blow from one branch to another. I don't mean to put hands on them, but there's a force to a fire.
Right.
There's something alive to a fire. It's very hungry.
Sure.
It's almost as if it sweeps along as a dry undergrowth that was traveling along with it, and when it comes to a tree, it's almost like it jumps up to that tree and starts going right up that tree. Yet it's all natural-looking flames, you know?
Yes.
And the music, as it sweeps along, you get some swell music there. When it hits these trees, you can bring out something with your music and scare the pants off them.
Let's say they come out on one side and find the other side of the river is a fire. They're between it. The trees are starting to fall, they explode, they fall in the stream, and then get on the end of the route there. There's only one way they can go, and that means a real leap.
I see a marvelous scene after the forest fire. It is a very desolate scene. I'm devastated.
Yeah, a no man's land.
Man doesn't come in and just kill them. He comes in and sets the forest afire, too. It was man's carelessness. It makes the ending more strong when man destroys himself in the forest as well.
I was wondering if whether the fact that man can be killed is the convincing thing that proves to them he's a living creature.
Have you read this book recently, Bambi? I think it'd be a good idea to have read it, because there's a lot of things in the book that can help us get that certain something. They talked about man in the book there. It's a lesson that Bambi learns. He understands that man is not the God, about the power of life and death over everybody.
somebody over all of us. Bigger. Bigger than all. Bigger than man.
I don't know, but I think that very dramatic chase has an awful lot to do with sending somebody out thinking they've seen something big. You know, it's powerful. You got to be dramatic in these things, or else they don't take it. They can have something where they can belly laugh from start to finish, but they won't think it's great. We want them to think that. We come from this whole devastated forest. The spring comes and everything comes up new. Sprouts on the charred trees, green foliage and everything, and the snow melting and everything build musically into a beautiful spring. We show everything grown up. In spite of what man has done, nature comes back and rebuilds itself. Now, we're not doing that in the other spring. This would be it. I don't know whether it would be correct or not, but it seems like if we have all young and Bambi had young, a whole generation.
Hurry up, Bambi.
Yes, Papa. I'm coming.
I think it would be beautiful here if we repeated the circumstances of Bambi's own birth.
You're coming in, and here are the little young ones and all the animals and all the excitement through the forest. And it's happened just like we paralleled in the beginning there.
Yeah.
All this excitement coming, and there's Faylene. And you know it's Faylene because the little animals are talking to her, and they say, won't Bambi be proud, and this and that. And there's her two children.
Look. Two of them.
The philosophy that we've got to have there is that things happen. They happen. They're beyond our control, and we've got to make the best of them.
I don't believe I've ever seen a more likely-looking pair of fawns.
You can get a magnificent effect with the wind and the same choral effect used in the opening episode. Then come up to a long shot of Bambi standing on the hill. A full screen silhouette.
We can go up into the trees and clouds again and leave him in the distance, silhouetted on the brow of the hill. I don't think you need to get a suggestion of the dangers they have in front of them. You've just gone through that. You wouldn't like to end it with that thought. It's just the way of the world. It's the way of life and everything that they're born into. Born